Hello, Daniel here for All Media Create. So today we're going to be talking about shutter speed. So shutter speed is basically referring to the shutter in a camera. Um, the best way to think of the shutter in a camera is to think of your own eyelid. So when your eyes are closed, it's taking in no light. Same as when a shutter is closed, it's taking in no light. When you have the setting on your camera set to 1/8000th of a second, it's basically referring to how quickly the shutter is going to open and close. So if it's set at 1/8000th of a second, then it's going to open pretty much like that. A lot quicker probably, but that's how quick it's going to be. If you set it to, usually the maximum is about 30 seconds, then it's going to open for 30 seconds. So the way that you'd use these two different timescales is the 1/8000th of a second is going to primarily be used for when it's sunny, and you're taking really quick pictures. So say if there's something moving and you need an instantaneous image to be imprinted onto the sensor, you would need a 1/8000th of a second setting shutter speed. If, on the other hand, you're taking a picture at night and you want to get the stars in the sky and everything else is really dark, you would need a 30 second exposure, basically exposing the sensor for 30 seconds, like that. So it also becomes a balancing act in terms of the aperture and the ISO. The ISO being the image sensitivity. So if you have 15, so say if you have, for instance, an ISO setting of 200 and you set the shutter speed for 30 seconds, it will be the equivalent to having an ISO at 400 but the shutter set at 15 seconds. So they both work in similar ways, but one will have a lower chance of creating blur, or not blur, sorry, but grain. That's the word I was looking for, grain. And the other one will have less chance of having grain. So the higher the ISO, the more grain that you're going to have. The lower the ISO, the least grain you're going to have on the image. And then also the aperture. What do you want in focus? If you want a specific thing in focus, then you're going to need a lower aperture. So then that will increase the time that you need to take the image, and vice versa. So if you have a higher aperture, there's going to be more light coming in, so you would need a lower shutter speed, and it becomes a balancing act of all three of those settings. That is pretty much the shutter speed in general. Now there's two ways of changing the look of the image in terms of light. Now you can change the image sensitivity. So like I say, exposure, shutter speed, aperture, sorry, and ISO, they can all influence the light that you're taking in. But another means of adjusting the lighting situation is to actually adjust the lighting within the image itself. So you can leave the camera on the settings that you want it to be set as, but you would need to influence and change the image itself. So usually this comes down to a studio environment. So if you really want to take a picture of a still image, for instance, and you can't get the perfect look outside, then bring it inside and use your own lighting. Do you want a fast speed on your camera? Then you would need more light in the image. If you wanted a slower speed on your camera, then you would need a less amount of light in the image. So there's two ways of changing the shutter speed. Really, it becomes a case of, do you want to change the shutter settings or do you want to change the image itself? So, as always, I've got a book on teamwork which would be quite beneficial in situations like this when you have to rely on teams of people sometimes. If you're in a photography group, for instance. And in that book you have links to suggested material and suggested reading, which are all Amazon affiliate links, and if you buy anything you will be helping the channel. So